The story of Frankenstein is not just a story. It is a whisper of a terrible, real truth. In the early 1800s, a real scientist was doing things far scarier than any book. He did not work in a dark castle. He worked on a public stage with real dead bodies. That time was a world of shadows. Death was always close. A sickness could come in the night and leave a house empty by morning. Doctors were just starting to look inside the human body. They cut up the dead to learn their secrets. The biggest secret of all was the spark of life itself. Then, a scientist named Luigi Galvani made a strange discovery. He saw a dead frog's legs kick when he touched them with two different metals. It was a sudden, shocking movement. He believed he had found the secret of life. A hidden power he called animal electricity. This idea was new and frightening. It suggested that the dead were not truly at rest. This dangerous idea did not stay hidden in a lab. It was taken up by another man. His name was Giovanni Aldini, and he was Galvani's nephew. But Aldini was not a quiet scientist. He was a showman. He wanted to take this scary new science out of the dark rooms and put it on a stage for everyone to see. His first shows were grim. He would take the head of a dead animal, like a large ox, and place it on a table in front of a crowd. People paid money to watch. He would attach wires to the dead head. When he sent electricity through it, the dead eyes would snap open. The tongue would move. The face would twist into a silent scream. This new power, this hidden spark, was too frightening to stay locked in a quiet room. It was like a ghost that had been let out of a bottle. It needed a stage, and it would soon find a master who was not afraid of the dark. That master was a man named Giovanni Aldini. He was the nephew of the first scientist who found this strange power. But Aldini was not a quiet man who worked in the shadows. He was a showman. He loved a crowd. He wanted to take this scary new science and show it to the world. He believed electricity was the key to life itself, and he would prove it. Not with quiet tests, but with big, loud shows that would make people scream. His first shows were simple, but still very scary. He would get the head of a dead animal, like a big ox, and place it on a table. In front of a crowd of people who had paid to see the horror, he would attach wires to its face. Then, he would send the electric spark through the wires. The dead ox's eyes would snap open. Its tongue would move back and forth in its mouth. The face of the dead thing would twist into a terrible shape, as if it felt pain again. But for Giovanni Aldini, making a dead animal move was not enough. It was a good trick, but he wanted more. He wanted to show his power over the greatest thing of all. He needed a human body. He needed a whole person, fresh from the place of death. And in the city of London, in the early 1800s, there was a way to get one. A dark and terrible way. The law at that time was very grim. It said that the bodies of people who were hanged for their crimes could be given to scientists. So Aldini moved to London, and he waited. Soon a man named George Forster was set to be hanged. He had done a terrible thing, but his punishment would not end when he died. His fate after death would be much, much stranger. As soon as George Forster's body was taken down from the gallows, it was rushed to a nearby building. Aldini was there with his tools and his wires. The show was about to begin. The show took place in a cold, dim room. It was filled with people, all watching and waiting. Their eyes were fixed on a wooden table in the middle of the room. On the table, the body of George Forster lay pale and still. The air was heavy with a strange silence. Then, a man stepped forward. It was Giovanni Aldini. In his hands, he held strange tools and long, thin wires. A hush fell over the room. Everyone held their breath. The show was about to begin. Aldini moved to the head of the table. He took one of his wires and touched it to the dead man's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the jaw began to quiver. The muscles of the man's cheek pulled tight into a terrible smile. The people in the room gasped. This was not supposed to happen. Dead men do not move. They do not smile. Aldini did not stop. He was just getting started. He moved the wire again. Suddenly, one of George Forster's eyes snapped open. It stared blankly at the horrified crowd. People screamed. Some tried to run. This was not a man anymore. It was a puppet, and Aldini was pulling the strings. But the worst was yet to come. Aldini was not done with his show. He placed metal rods on the dead man's chest and back. He was ready to use more power. He wanted to show everyone what electricity could truly do. The dead body jumped on the table. It was a violent, jerking motion. Its back arched so much it almost broke. One of its fists clenched tight and punched the empty air. For a moment, it looked like the corpse was trying to rise. The story of this terrible show spread like a plague. People whispered about the dancing corpse. The news traveled across the land, a chilling tale told in dark rooms and quiet corners. A young woman heard these stories. Her name was Mary Shelley. She heard all about the real scientist, Giovanni Aldini. She heard about the awful things he was doing on a public stage. An idea began to grow in her mind. It was an idea about a man who creates life and the horror that follows. The story of Frankenstein is not just a monster tale. It is about a scientist's pride. It asks a dark question. What happens when we find a new, strange power and use it without thinking of the cost? This was the very thing Giovanni Aldini did. He put on a show of power, making the dead move for a paying crowd. Mary Shelley took that real fear, the shock from that real room, and she wrote a story that would never be forgotten. The name Giovanni Aldini is not one many people remember, but the shadow he cast is long. The fear he unleashed in that London room has never truly left us. It changed shape, hiding inside a story about a mad doctor and his monster, a story that still whispers to us in the dark. In the end, Aldini failed. He never brought George Forster or anyone else back from the dead. But the true horror was not in his failure. It was in his attempt. He stood before a crowd and showed them that the dead could dance on strings of lightning. He tried to steal fire from the gods. He proved how fragile the wall between life and death really is, that a body is a machine that can be turned on, even for a moment. The questions he asked with his wires and his terrible power still echo today. They are found in our labs, in our books, and in our quietest fears about what lies on the other side of life. The story of Frankenstein was more than just a scary tale. It changed how people saw scientists. They were not just helpers anymore. They could be creators of monsters. They held a power that was once only for gods, a power over life and death itself. What did Giovanni Aldini truly believe he was doing? Did he think he could really beat death? Or was his work just a dark show for a paying crowd? His true thoughts are lost to time, a secret buried with him. That is the deepest chill of all. The thought that he might have been close, that with a little more power, a bigger spark of that strange energy, the body on the table might not have just twitched. It might have taken a breath. The story that Mary Shelley wrote grew far beyond her book. The monster she imagined became a warning. It was a dark whisper about science that goes too far, a shadow that fell over every new discovery. Then the monster moved from the page to the big screen. It became a new kind of terror for a new time. The real, awful show in that London room was mostly forgotten.
A famous movie monster took its place in our minds, but the question from that old story still haunts us. Who was the real monster? Was it the sad creature built from dead parts? Or was it the doctor who created a life he could not control and then ran away in fear? The ghost of Aldini's work is still seen today. Doctors use electric power to restart a heart that has stopped beating. They take parts from one person to help another live. Science still walks that same thin line between saving a life and creating something new. The fear of Frankenstein is a fear that lives inside all of us. It is the primal fear of death, and it is the deeper fear of what happens when we try to stop it. The story will not stay buried because that fear is always with us. So the shadow of that London stage is still here. It does not haunt an old castle. It haunts our modern world. It is a quiet presence in clean hospital rooms where machines can keep a body breathing long after life is gone. The final, unsettling truth is that we are all living in Dr. Frankenstein's world. The line between a miracle and a monster is now very blurry, and the old dark question of what it means to be alive has never been harder to answer.